Hey everyone, this is Krish. Hope you're doing well. I'm recording this video on Sunday, just a little before the Oscars. I hope you're all just as excited as I am, just to see a whole lot of creative people in a single room. It's just overwhelming and exciting as well. In any case, in this video, I want to talk about maybe a little bit about about microservices, right? You've probably heard that term used different ways over many years. Here is what it means to me. So I'd made a video the other day just speaking a bit to why I think coding is an art. I think design and architecture are no different, right? They're forms of art as well. And here's why, right? When you say microservices, it means we all understand what it is, but it kind of means different things to different people depending on what the type of problem you might be solving at any given point of time. Here's how I look at microservices, right? So let's say you're starting out to building a new application. Um, I'm just going to go with my restaurant example, if for no other reason, but just that I used it in a couple of my videos and I remember some of it, I think. Say you're building an application and your customers are restaurant owners. And I'm making this up as I'm going, so apologies if some of it doesn't make sense towards the end. Hopefully, most of it does. Let's say you're making an app or a software product for restaurants, and you expect to have restaurant owners sign up for that service. Um, so let's say you start with one restaurant, you collect the requirements, you build an application. It has a certain user interface and a certain set of back-end functionality. Now you become popular enough. So let's say you sign up a second big restaurant. Now they might want a slightly different look and feel, a change of color, the logos, the positioning, the overall theme of the user interface, and they also might want other variations, right? Maybe the requirements are similar but not exactly the same. So you start making tweaks to your existing application to support that second restaurant. Now you have a third, you have a fourth, and so on and so forth. What happens now is you started an app with one customer in mind, and now you've grown, which is a good problem to have, and you start adding more code to implement these additional layers of requirements. What happens at some point is you begin to realize that you're growing fast enough. I mean, I'm taking a random example, but you could sort of hopefully get the picture. Uh, Now you're gonna at some point soon enough have a monolithic application, a big one that serves a number of different kinds of restaurants and use cases. And then you start running into issues in terms of maintenance, the separation between requirements. Let's say I get a new set of requirements from one customer, from one restaurant that is not applicable to the others. Now, how do I implement this and not cause regression in other pieces of the application? So you're going to run into questions of that nature. At that point, you're like, okay, you know what? Maybe this shouldn't be a single application. I want to break this down into multiple applications, right? So, what are some ways you could do that? Let's say you decide, okay, I'm going to have a single app per restaurant, right? Just let's say that's an option you want to explore. It wouldn't make sense soon enough, but let's start with that. You're going to say, okay, for restaurant one, I'm going to have this application that lives by itself, and for the second restaurant, I have a different application, and for the third one, and for the fourth one, right? So each of them, you could sort of look at it like a microservice, even though it's not. But let's say we do use that word loosely in this at this point. What are the problems, right? Now, let's say you go to 100 restaurants or 150. You couldn't possibly, have like 150 microservices. It doesn't make sense for something of this nature, right? If you're a whole lot bigger, then you're going to have hundreds of microservices. But this example is actually a bad one, right? And I intentionally took a bad one just to say that you wouldn't break it down that way because they are different tenants. So you're building a multi-tenant application, but that's not a microservice. Now let's say for now that we understand that, let's say you take a single application, that particular application for restaurant, and then you start thinking about, okay, what does it actually do? If you start bucketing and categorizing your requirements, you could say it. If you have a restaurant, I don't own one, I have no idea, but I'm just going to make this up. You rent a place. Let's say you have a single location. You have rental. You have to deal with the company, the property owners. and whatnot for your electricity and internet and other such items. And then you have equipments like all your stove, cooking ranges, and machinery and whatnot. You have your your employees, folks that work for you. You have vendors or suppliers who supply your meat and vegetables and whatnot. And then you have your customers who might order online through the mobile devices, which is walk into the store. So there's different stakeholders here. And you could say, okay, I want to break this application down into different microservices driven by the stakeholders. So you could have a microservice that deals with suppliers and vendors, one that deals with the user interface for your end users who are customers, one that deals with you managing your employees and payroll and whatnot, and another one maybe for your rental and electricity and all of that kind of stuff. So you're sort of breaking it down through by business components. Those could surely lend themselves as microservices, right? But there's another way to look at it. You could have technical microservices, and what I mean by that is, let's say, regardless of who the stakeholders are, you're going to have a persistence layer, whether it's some of it is in memory, some of it is written to disk, but those persistence layers are common to all of these, could be common to all these stakeholders. So you could have a microservice that deals with just the persistence layer, and you have like a graph or REST APIs that sit on top, atop those persistence layers that serve that data, just purely backend components, right? And then you could have another microservice or a set of microservices that interact with inventory and your suppliers and getting your meat and vegetables and soda and all of that kind of stuff, telling them in real time if you're low in stock or what you need to procure and so on and so forth. That could be a separate suite of microservices. You probably have different integration with different third-party systems. I'm not able to think of examples just because I'm not a restaurant owner, but you can imagine you probably have a variety of touch points there. So some of them or all of them could lend themselves to being their own microservices. And then you have a mobile app or a bunch of mobile applications, maybe some for your end users, some for your employees, some to interact with your vendors and suppliers, and you have web applications and admin interfaces and whatnot. So each of them could be microservices. So I look at them as sort of technical microservices, right? Again, these are high-level examples. The devil is always in the detail, but I just want to share at least at that level. So we talked about the first example where it didn't make sense for those to be microservices. There's just an intentional bad example. The second one is business microservices. Third one is technical microservices. But again, these are not mutually exclusive, so you could have a combination of these services in play. And what do microservices bring to the table? Well, what they bring several things to the table. One of the things is, when you have to make a set of changes to a component, you have this fear of regression because you're not breaking things across the board. You're only working on that isolated piece, and you run your regression tests and test suites after you make your code changes only on those components. So you could it's much easier to make the changes. It's not volatile. You don't have this fear of breaking other components, and then you can deploy each of these microservices by themselves. Obviously, they are smaller than it being part of a big monolithic system. So that's just ease of deployment, and you could be going to, pushing to production either once in 2 weeks, once in 3 weeks, or once a week, or several times a week, or maybe several times a day as well. So it makes it a whole lot easier because they live as separate systems. That apart, just there's a number of other items, but just jumping guns of some sort. As an engineer, as a developer, as an architect, whoever you are, building these become easier and more exciting as well because you can pick the stack that interests you or the stack that's more suitable to solving that particular problem, and you can build that microservice. It could be a microservice, could be a full stack all the way through, or it could be different components, just UI, mobile, backend components, however you want to see them. But regardless, you could build them in a language or framework of your choice, of your team's choice for that solving that particular problem. So now you have an ecosystem that's filled with a variety of different applications each doing what it does very well and solving that particular problem. So I think sometimes it's easier said than done. But even before some of these terms become popular, you'd agree that a lot of us actually use it. We may not use the right terms and terminology and jargons to associate our thought process with those items. But regardless, you probably have implemented this long before you've actually even heard those terms being used more commonly. But then it helps the cause because when more people start using it, it becomes easy for you to convey the point to your business customers or business clients or your technical clients and whatnot. Anyways, that's my high level overview on microservices. Hope it was useful to some of you. I'm just going to upload this and go watch the Oscars. Have a good Sunday. Bye bye.